Okay, it is 7:04 p.m. roughly, and Central Standard Time, and welcome to week number 3 of business law. Today is Wednesday, February the 23rd, and so I will be here roughly for the next hour or so, going over the information and details for the assignments for this week. Again, I attempted to show you guys where you can find the comments. Okay, to find the comments section in your grades, particularly people asked about week 1. So I'm going to show you that in just a few minutes. All right. So let's take a look at the calendar. And this is the month view. Today is the 23rd. Your initial post was due last night, the 22nd, which was, as if I reminded me, is 2/22/22. And then your reply post is due on Saturday, the 26th. Your written assignment is due the 27th, Sunday, and your reply post, then your live classroom phrase is also due on that day. All right. Then we will be in in March, the next time we come together for class. And March is actually a signal for the end of the semester, term, or quarter, should I say. The 18th is the day, not the 19th, not the 20th, but the 18th. All assignments must be in. In addition, at the end of this week, anyone who has not completed assignments 1, 2, or 3, you will not be able to submit them. And even if you submit them and there is no extenuating circumstances, you could be beyond the 7 days. I do remind you again that when you look in the grade book on Monday after assignments were due, for example, when I graded the assignments for week number 1, those assignments were due on the 13th. So on the 14th, I put zeros in for everybody who didn't turn in. Same thing, week 2 assignments were due Sunday, the 20th. So on the 21st, I put zeros in. Those are not your final grades, because some students says, well, I thought I had 7 days before I was graded. Nope, you're not, because all grades I have to submit by that Friday after they're due. So the 13th for week 1, I submitted them. I got the grades in by the 18th. Okay, for week 2, rather, I'm sorry. For week number 2, the 18th. That was for week number 1, rather. So then for week number 2, it'll be Friday night. Okay, and that's how it works. But be aware, you don't want to miss those deadlines. Let's take a look at the announcement for week 3. Let's move this. Government and consumer protection will be presented. To prepare for the assignment, read chapters 5, 13, and 17 of the text. I provide you with the corresponding PowerPoints for your studying activities. And then dealing with activities relating to government regulation and operations, agencies, and then the practice flashcards. Okay, and then your discussion assignment is entitled Consumer Protection Laws, and that was due, as I said, the initial post yesterday, the 22nd, and then Saturday, the 26th, the reply post. Pay close attention to the rubrics. It's in bold print. Federal laws and business report is the written assignment for this week. Now, be aware of the fact that when I say pay attention to the rubrics will contain an outline of how the grades are arrived at, but it's not just the rubrics. Even though they're usually pretty close to the same, it's also what's in the module that goes in. All assignments should be APA. All, not some, all assignments. Even if you don't hear it said, remember that. All assignments are APA. That means there must be citations in the body and references at the end. Okay? Very important that you get that. All right? I know week one, we had some issues with that. The people thought with PowerPoints, they didn't understand it meant what it said. And then that's the only assignment that will be done in PowerPoint. The rest of them will be done generally in Word document. All right, so we're going to talk about that as well. All right, adversity springboard to success is my motto, so that you understand that I know people have issues that happen, but I've been there. And actually, I tell students, you guys have it easier than when I did because you got technology. There was no such thing when I was getting my degree. Okay. So let's go to Module 3, Government and Consumer Protection. Let's first look at a discussion assignment. So the Federal Trade Commission, FTC known as, administers the Bureau of Consumer Protection, and review the contents available on the FTC website. This link will tell you that. And then consider the rules, different rules maintained by the Bureau of Competition, and then deal with these 2 points in your initial post, and then reply to another individual's post for your reply post. Okay, very important. All right. Your written assignment, okay, that is due on Sunday, the 27th. Use this scenario. Select at least 4 laws or regulations that deal with business and trade operations. Places like the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, the Department of Commerce, and the Department of Labor may be some helpful places. 3 to 4 pages. A lot of people are going to catch it on this one. 3 pages, double space. Don't copy and paste, but explain the law or regulation, identify each affect various business within the state and its communities. What long-term impact do these laws have both on business locally and generally? See, tells you again, correct grammar, spelling, punctuation, and APA in-text citations and references, reference page. Then if you need assistance with APA, here it is right here. Okay. Make sure you run your papers through Grammarly as well. Again, this is a Word document. So then let's look at the rubric, and some students have wondered why, if they don't have citations, why they end up over here. Because this, for example, in this one, if you didn't have at least 4 laws or regulations, and I will be checking, you'll end up over here. So if you have 3, 2, or 1, you're going to end up over here. Limited explanation of each of the laws. In other words, you just touched on them, that's it. Long-term impact, limited. Notice it says limited, and then grammatical issues here. So you don't just lose points down here for APA and citations. It goes throughout the paper, because when you don't have APA citations in the body, you provide limited information. Remember, citations support your statements in your paper and provide support, so it helps elaborate. The reader should be able to know the source that you got your information from. And please don't constantly tell me I can cite myself. I don't even cite myself. There are some students who are able to do that to a point, but you still have to provide some credible sources. So this is where I grade from. At least 4 were included in here, okay? Thorough, notice this says thorough. That means you had citations in the body and reference page. All right, thorough and detailed. Thorough and detailed, same thing. And then no grammatical or spelling errors. All right, and that's the assignment. That's how it works. Now, if you have any questions, type in the chat box. I'll see them. Now, again, I'm going to show you again where you see the feedback, because students say, oh, I didn't see any feedback. And I'm going to show you again. I'll show you with using, go to the grade book, and I'll do week 2 because I haven't graded them yet. Okay. All right, so here's a student who's completed it. And so therefore, they don't have a grade yet. So here's what it would be like. So the actual attempt, okay. And the paper will show up here. So here you're not going to really see the paper because I'm not going to go into it. But this presumes I will have downloaded this and read the paper. Then I go, this is where I find it. I click on this for the rubric. And so then this is how I start your scoring. So I'll look at this and see if the person satisfied, okay, thorough and detailed explanation, okay. Substantial explanation, which is less than thorough. Reasonable, that means just a few, and then limited explanation. If you don't have citations to back it, you're going to end up in limited. I've said this before and I'll say it again. You're going to end up in limited. So this person I would click on this, and then I would put feedback. It's called criterion feedback. That is where I type it in. The only time I can't type it in here is when it's late. Then I have to type it in at the top. There's a space here that allows me to put feedback for students, and it goes there, okay? But the only time I use that is when I cannot use the comment section of the rubric. So then I go down each section, do the same thing, okay, and I open it up. So is this area here. Now, I might put enough feedback in here to cover the rest of these in some instances. Sometimes I have to do each one where it affects the grade. But it's pretty clear usually what I say up here, what the feedback will be. That's where you find your feedback in your grade book at the bottom. But you got to look at the rubric in the grade book, not just the grade itself. So last time I'm going to do that, all right? Because I've done this a couple of times. So now let's come down. Let's get out of the grade book. Come out of here, assignments. Okay. All right, so now you got that. So let's go back to today's lecture, get started now. So you have your live classroom lecture, your recording, which you will find here. And so we're going to talk about government regulation impact, organizations, and agencies. All right. And then I'll just show you the flashcards. So you should be aware of the fact that the government regulations are there for two purposes. One of the purposes is to protect the interests of the consumers. That's what usually you'll see with the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. And the other is that it also protects businesses operating in the realm. So it is important that all businesses provide safeguards to the public. That's why week one was provided in the PowerPoints to the public when they're operating business. And it also involves the people that work for the business as well. So you got the consumer, you have the business people, and the employees of the business as well. Okay, so they give an example here about good old Amazon, and everybody's familiar with Amazon. I know I'm very familiar with them. I have a Prime membership, and I get a lot of packages constantly from them. So look at what happened with Amazon. They got caught violating the Federal Trade Commission. They had to pay 61.7 million, which is nothing compared to what they make. It's like a slap on the wrist because of the way that they were paying their employees, the flex drivers. And so the point of the matter is that the Federal Trade Commission is there to protect. All right. You have to make sure that you satisfy these. So now, the role of the Federal Trade Commission is, as it is stated, to stop unfair, deceptive, and fraudulent practices. And individuals who file complaints are able to sue individually, but also the FTC, which is an agency watchdog, can file suits and class actions on behalf of consumers. And one of the key things is that you want to maintain the ability to protect consumers as well. All right. So the Federal Trade Commission also deals with dealing with scams that companies might have, misrepresentations. And the key thing is, as I go back again, to protect both the public as well as the businesses and the employees. And that's pretty much what the Federal Trade Commission does. Um, you'll find the Federal Trade Commission is involved with um, complaints of your credit reports, complaints of being denied credit, complaints about how companies are ripping off the public and things of that nature. This is this is uh, the key thing that you need to understand. So when you're in business, you deal a whole lot with it. Now, this is just one of them. We'll talk about some others in a few minutes. So you know what the impact is to protect. So dealing with the businesses themselves, you deal with the people who work for the business, the employees. They have um, labor standards and the Fair Labor Standards Act, um, and then the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 70, also known as OSHA, that formed that organization. Then the Civil Rights Act that says you can't discriminate against people on the race, religion, or sexual origin. National Labor Relations Act, and making sure that individuals operate within the law in terms of making sure individuals are taken care of. Again, you'll see this word a lot dealing with the statutes and regulations. Uh, Equality, to balance the playing field. Equity, that means clean hands. We have a thing in the law that if you're going to file for injunctive relief or you filing for some kind of injunction or restraining order other than for money, you must have what we call clean hands. It's a figure of speech, but what that means is that you can't be in the dirt yourself and then ask for an injunction to allow you to continue your unfair practices. So, as I said, there's again the three: consumers, workers, and the industry will do well when each of these acts are complied with, and the various agencies that deal with it, the Labor Department. And by the way, you should be aware that the federal government has the federal level of it, but then every state also has their own state provisions relating to labor and things of that nature, along with that work in conjunction with the federals. All right. So once again, we talk about the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, FTC, dealing with consumer safety. Make sure goods are proper. You know, you get recalls, right? You've seen recalls on vehicles, almost any product. That's monitored by the Federal Trade Commission. Um, not the Federal Trade Commission, but the Consumer Product Safety Commission. And but the idea is that this section for consumer protection is involved to make sure that items that you buy are safe. Uh, Car seats, bikes. There you can have go on their website and you can constantly see that there are recalls. I actually receive emails myself when there is something. Okay, when a car when they have a recall from the company or the manufacturer of the car, and it lets us know about that. And it also requires, if you know this, that when you get recalls, that you're not to pay for the items that are recalled, or not to pay to have them repaired, because that's something that has to do with the manufacturer of that product. And so under the law, again, operating under FTC, and you have the Product Safety Commission that is established to implement that protection of the products, okay? And then the laws that are passed govern that. Consumer Product Safety Act and the Improvement Act of 2008 as well. So the U.S. Department of Commerce is the federal cabinet that oversees the whole program in terms of taking care of making sure that trade is fair. Again, keeping the playing field level for all the parties that I mentioned earlier. Okay, dealing with, as they say, all of the stakeholders that are involved. So the government regulations, as it says, can often determine the direction and path of the business, from safety efforts to job creation, laws to influence corporate trends, patterns, and progress, and things of that nature. Again, the whole idea is to have a watchdog for the employer, employees, the business people who are competitors against each other, and then the consumers. Today's lecture is more, I call it, an esoteric one, because the fact that we're dealing with some of these specific laws. Now, you should be aware that you can have so many other agencies, but they're just, what they're doing in this week's module is pretty much explaining to you that it's not just about you and the consumer. It's not just about you and your employees. Someone will tell them, like, for example, the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, would implement the Civil Rights Act of '64 that says you can't discriminate against individuals on the basis of race, religion, or national origin. Okay, here we go. So now what happens is, under the laws, there are what we call regulations that actually, should I say, put meat on the laws. So, and what happens is that these regulations specifically address the issues, and the example that they use to show you here is the EPA and the good old, dare I say it, it's almost April 15th, even though I think taxes are due the 18th this year. The good old Inferno, as somebody calls it, Revenue Service. And they operate to oversee. And you know, the Environmental Protection Agency, right? They have the laws that protect our natural resources, our trees, our water, our air, and the environment around us, and land, in terms of that. For example, dealing with landfills, you should also be aware of the fact that we have this thing that we do, we have waste management as our company that picks up our trash and waste management has recycling, and there are certain things that they cannot put in certain landfills because of the fact that it would seep into the soil and adversely affect the plants. And plants provide food for us, along with the animals that would eat that grass or whatever it is. Again, the meat that we eat. Um, so the bread that you eat using the wheat and the plants to make that. So you begin to get where I'm coming from. So as I was telling somebody who was a vegan, I was explaining to them that the regulation for not just meat, but regulation for plants and water. Also, there are, you can run into, and this is not with FTC, but this is more with FTC rather than EPA, is water. Just like this water here that I have, okay, it says Ice Mountain on here. Now, it is required that they list the source of that water. It says sourced in Michigan, Sanctuary Springs, Rodney, Evart Springs, and White Springs. So can they take water that's generally from Lake Michigan and put this in this and sell it as Ice Mountain legally? Could they do that? Yes or no? Anybody? Type it. I'll see it in the chat box. No, they can't, because it's a deceptive practice. That's why labeling is also part of the law and require that they put in what's in the ingredients. This says 100% natural spring water. If you can't really see it, there it is right there, 100% right there. So that means that if you have 99%, then you are misrepresenting. And so the labeling of the products themselves, for example, you go to the store and I tell my wife, I says, I want some grape juice. And when you go there, the label should say 100% grape juice. But people try to save money and they don't look and they get a mixture. So it's maybe watered down grape juice. It might have some other things in it. It might have some sugar in it that's other than from the actual grape itself. So grape juice should be produced 100% from the grapes. And so the government regulates that and make sure that the consumer is getting what they're paying for. I taught ethics in business a few years ago at Rasmussen. And when I was teaching that, we learned something about Taco Bell that maybe you should or should not know, but um, they use fillers along with some other places, but I'm calling them out because of some research that we discovered in that class. And but they were able to put the fillers out there because the government allowed a certain percentage of fillers to be put in there. So you wouldn't just be eating the beef, you were eating fillers as well. Um, Same thing with organic. If it's labeled organic, the FTC will say, hey, it better be organic. And they can research and check. I think it was Purdue who makes chickens, they don't make chickens, but they sell chicken. They were claiming that their chickens were uh, corn-fed or something that they were saying that was different from other places. You know, same thing with certain meats, how the cows are fed, dealing with the products that come from the cow, the meat and the milk and things of that nature. So again, most of this lecture is about the Federal Trade Commission and how designed, as I said, here's that quote again, consumers and to promote competition. That means that to make sure that the law protects them. You have the FTC Commission Act that implements telemarketing sale laws. Now that telemarketers cannot call you any hours of the day, just like you deal with the Fair Credit Reporting Act, uh, collection agencies, and some of the processes that are used to collect. Identity Theft Act, um, because that's on the rise, as you know. I just got something in the email today from PayPal telling me that something was charged to me by PayPal, and it wasn't, because the email, once I hovered over to see where it came from, it was some individual. And you don't click on those and open those. You guys know what I'm talking about. So there's a whole bunch of laws. I mean, just it's a myriad. But the key thing is that we want all individuals to have opportunities to operate, whether they're big companies, medium-sized companies, or small companies. And you can almost be rest assured that now, since we're dealing internationally, then we have to make sure that the laws are complied with to protect the consumer in terms of buying things. So again, that's pretty much it for today. Any questions about any of the topics? This is pretty easy today. It's also dry, but as I went to law school and practiced law, no one said the law was exciting, but it is there for our society. It's actually another word for laws, as I reminded my students every time I would teach generally. I say every time I would teach generally, that sounds funny, but generally when I teach, I should say this: laws, another word for laws. Can anybody tell me what another word for laws would be? See if you get it. Just type it in. What's another word for laws? You could say regulations, but it's a shorter word than that. Anybody? What are laws? There are consequences for violating laws. So what is another word for laws? Code. Now you're getting real technical again. Now you're getting technical again. How about rules? You see, it was right there in your face. Rules. Rules. That's all it is. These are a bunch of rules. That's all it is. And you guys were uh, going into the deep, but no, it's just simply rules. You can do this, should do this, or you shouldn't do this or that. Isn't that what rules? Did you learn about laws at home as a kid generally, or did you learn about rules at home generally? Which one? And that even counts my kids who grew up in a home with a dad who's a lawyer. You learn rules, right? Okay. And that's what keeps us operating efficiently. If people would just realize that, like for example, I don't like paying taxes, but I understand the reason for it is because it helps the government to provide services uh, for us, and that everybody who receives what we call income, most income, pays taxes on that into the pool. And then, as you know, they withhold money, but then you can also get a refund. Did you not know? And some people did not even know this, but if you think about it, the IRS doesn't give you money. Well, I'm not talking about stimulus, okay? And the child care credit thing where you got the monies. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about on a regular basis. Every year, you don't get money back from the government that the government gives. It's really your money. So when your taxes are withheld and you look on and you cry and you look at it, well, remember you're getting the benefit from some of those things there in roads, streets, bridges, water, all the stuff that we've been talking about pretty much a few minutes ago. It's you, the employee, who has to pay into that, and then the consumer who buys it, they pay the price for it as well. Which is why if you have theft and stuff like that, everybody's spread across the purchase of those items, your prices go up on things. Like for example, when resources are few and far in between, you get, let's get into the good old regulation that I know dealing with economics, good old S&D. Anybody know when I say S&D, what I'm talking about? S stands for one word and D stands for another. What is that? Anybody know? It's a business term when you deal with economics. Anybody know? It's supply and demand. Supply and demand. And demand. Yeah, it's both of them. Yeah, the S is for supply and the D is for demand. Yeah, that's what it is. Supply and demand. And when there's a scarcity in the supply and there's demand for it or tremendous demand, then that means there are fewer people um, that are going to be able to get it. So they still got to make money in the business, so the price goes up. So this conflict that's taking place right now on a international level um, with Russia uh, and Ukraine is going to affect oil prices. Somebody said, but wait a minute, don't we have oil in this country? I says, well, yeah, you get it from certain parts of the country, but that's why you have federal regulations relating to that. So what I'm trying to say is when the supply is decreased, the demand's still going to be there. Then that's why we also deal with taking care of our air. So I got my car just reminded me that before I renew my license this time, that I had to take my car and get the emissions so that we can have cleaner air and those kinds of things. Um, you can't pollute the water. Again, the agency EPA uh, deals with that, the Clean Air and Water Act and things of that nature. So you think about everything you do, there are rules for it, but there's a good reason if you stop and you think about what those rules are. Okay. All right. So here's some flashcards that you can use. This is for studying, for self-assessment. And You talk about things like duress. We didn't talk about that so much, but duress is when you're forced to do something. That's wrongful coercion. Takes away your free will. It's also a criminal term as well. Okay. So then you drag the card to the right, to the right. Come on, card. Go to the right. Disappear. I don't know why it's on. Oh, I know why. Because I'm on the recording. Then there's the next one. Punitive damages. So punitive damages are damages that are awarded to punish people, punish individuals. So anyway, these are terms that you want to take a look at, so you can go over that as well. So, any questions? Uh, why do I have to know about these things? Because this is business law. Okay. These are the laws. And actually, to be honest with you, I don't know a whole lot about some of these things, but I did know them as I was working in business more than I was doing in other areas. But you have to be aware of that. Okay, remember last week we talked about contracts and certain contracts that need to be in writing to be enforceable, and so we talked about the statute of frauds, and incidentally saying that um, someone called it the statute of defrauds, and I told them that's not what it is. It's actually statute of frauds. And the reason why that name came about, it goes back to Old England, which is where most of our laws came from on the level, federal and state, from Britain, except one state, and that's good old Louisiana. They have the Napoleonic Code, which is based on France. So even in that state, you still have the federal laws that apply across the board. But I was talking about internal state laws that they have. But the key thing there is to protect you. So let's. Any questions? Everybody's pretty silent today. No questions? Okay. How about the key phrase? Any suggestions? There are two possibilities that I have on the top of my head. Anybody want to try? See if they can get it? That's pretty good, but that's not it. But that is what we all study. Or, what's the or? What's the or? That means that you had another one. What's the other one? Eh, actually, the Federal Trade Commission uh, promotes consumer protection primarily. And it does promote competition as well. But the answer is the one you had at first, FTC. But don't give me FTC. I want you to write it out, just like Chate was that wrote that in there. Yeah. Federal Trade Commission. That's the key phrase. organization entity I want to see. You give me that, and you get your points for the day. All right. I'm going to say good night to everybody. Stay safe. Take care of yourself. Remember that we're heading to the second. Well, actually, we're more than halfway through, because this is not a 6-week class. This is a 5.5. And that's because we start in the middle of the week and we end in the middle of the week. So, all right. So I will see you next Wednesday at the same time. So good night to everyone. Pay close attention to those rubrics and where I said you'd find your feedback. And listen to what I say in the lectures. All right.